Good evening. My name is Mike Lincoln, and I'm head of the business department at Cooley. And I'm delighted to introduce our guest, my friend Steve Riddick. I first met Steve over 20 years ago. Some of you were not yet born. And at the time, Steve and I actually did something entrepreneurial, as lawyers go. And about the same time in the 90s, the late 90s, we both launched an office for a Silicon Valley-based law firm. So Steve and I were competitors, but we were frenemies. I think that's fair. And so fast forward, we now work with Steve. He's had a terrific career. He after being a partner at two major law firms, he went to an in-house job with a global corporation that included being general counsel of all of the Asia operations for PracticePro. And then when he left PracticePro, he went to Tenable Security locally, which just went public last year and now has a $3 billion market cap. And so Steve joined the company pre-IPO in 2017, has built the legal department, and then he shepherded through the IPO with our help. We share a lot in common, but one thing we're both deeply committed to is diversity. We talk about it a lot. Steve, I teach a class at UVA Law School, and Steve's a guest every year. And so we've talked about this, but in the sense of not words and window dressing and hand waving, but real meaningful action. And as a small example of that, Steve, I went to Steve a few years ago with Alex Knight and a few others, and we talked about forming the African American Executive Network locally, and he was the first person I bounced it off of, and we talked about how to organize that. Now we're a few years into this very successful group, and again, it would be an example of getting together and doing something that's actionable that really helps the business and legal community. So with that, please welcome Steve Riddick.
Good evening. I'm hoping that our friendly cameraman captured that introduction because that was really good. Midway, until he said Steve, I wasn't quite sure if he was actually talking about me or someone else, but it works. I'm really excited to be here with you all this evening, and thank you to Cooley for hosting here at their wonderful offices in downtown. Thank you to PracticePro, obviously, and Nikki, who is one of my great friends now after 30, 40 minutes. And we bonded over like 12 topics in a half an hour. So it is the mission, the organization that you founded is absolutely wonderful. And quite honestly, I'm a little bit jealous because there was nothing like this when we were in law school, Mike. Nothing. So some of the content, the resources, the networking, and just sort of soft skills that you all have been exposed to and will continue to be exposed to is just absolutely wonderful. I will say that I had a speech ready, 4 or 5 days ago, which for me is a long time to be prepared in advance, but it was a little flowery, and it was going to talk a little bit about what all of you have accomplished and what might lie ahead for you, and aspirational stuff, and the contributions that you are going to make professionally and to the legal profession and society as a whole. And I figured this morning, no, we can do a little better than that. We can be a little bit more direct than that. As Mike knows, and where's my good friend Madison? Madison works very closely with us on any number of matters. I can be blunt, and I think today's a good day for some blunt, straight talk. Let's say that let's and some of this is on the fly, so it's quite extemporaneous speaking to some degree. I think that it is, it's going to be, I want to spend a little bit of time chatting with you all about diversity, and inclusion, right? There is a distinction, there's some nuance there that is, I think, important to flag as we sort of think about the careers that you are all about to sort of launch very, very soon. Some of you are already in the midst of the early stages of legal practice, so hopefully this will resonate with you to some degree. In addition to that, we're going to talk a little bit about my journey, and then I'm going to leave you with some tips and tricks, as they would say, but what I call themes for success that you may want to consider, you may want to ruminate over in the upcoming weeks, months, and perhaps even years. And let's start with the notion of diversity and inclusion, because I want to be really clear that I think that they are separate concepts, and the one without the other doesn't really do you a whole lot of good. Doesn't do any of us a whole lot of good, quite honestly. In terms of diversity, you don't need me to look at this room, look at this diverse, incredibly powerful, talented set of individuals here. I'm honored to be here speaking with you. You don't need me to sort of define it. You know, everybody knows enough to know that in a work setting, let's just keep it to that for this purpose. In a work setting, to the extent that you have a diverse, inclusive environment where people are allowed to be themselves, where people are allowed to bring and demonstrate the different skills that they bring to the equation, you're more likely than not guaranteed, but more likely than not to have employees who are more energized, more engaged, more productive, and last time I checked, that's good for business. That's really good for business. So that's the basics, that's the broad brush stuff. Now let's go beyond that. Let's peel the onion just a little bit. Because I'm focused on your path, right? Your pathway forward as diverse attorneys. And my really good friend and college fraternity brother, Mr. Orris Stewart, who is the NBA, National Basketball Association's SVP for Diversity and Inclusion, has a way of describing diversity and inclusion that I think is apt and apropos, particularly given the fact that we're now in the midst of the NCAA basketball tournament. And oh, by the way, I'm going to the game later tonight. So I will be brief. How about that? So the way he describes it is essentially as follows. Diversity is essentially being on the team, right? You're on the team, you go to the practices, when it's time for a game, you're on the team bus, okay? That's diversity. Got it. Inclusion, however, is when you are in the game. PT, playing time. You get in the game. You are, as a result of that, in a position to influence the outcome. You can, to a certain extent, have your hand on the steering wheel and really contribute. And diversity without inclusion, in my opinion, doesn't really get you too far. So as you start your careers and you move forward, whether you're in a law firm setting or government setting, clerkship, in-house corporate staff, or something like that, I think it would behoove you to spend some time looking around, assessing, because it's always, as an aside, wherever you're working, it's always a two-way observational and two-way assessment period, right? They're looking at you, they're judging your work, your teammates, your teamwork and the like, and your compatibility and so on and so forth. But you should always be doing the same thing with respect to the organization, with respect to the culture of the organization, with respect to the partners, senior executives, clients, customers, however you describe them. Okay, aside over. So, you've got to determine whether or not, as far as that organization is concerned, there is an interest, there is a receptivity in the culture of the organization to diverse lawyers being simply on the team or on the team and in the game. And you will, I think, as you go forward in your careers, you will be in a position to make that assessment and react accordingly, quite honestly. As you look, again, continuing on with this notion of your pathway forward, to the extent that I can be blunt, and I've told you, I've warned you that I will be blunt today, so here goes. I think as you look to your pathway forward, there is in my opinion, there's a high likelihood that your career as a body of diverse attorneys is certainly going to be different in some ways than the career of folks that are not diverse, right? No big revelation there. Even within and amongst diverse attorneys, careers will be different. Some will pan out in different ways, and some will go in different paths, and so on and so forth. But one thing that I can say with pretty darn good certainty, and at least in terms of looking back over the years at my own career and the careers of those with whom I'm close, although many sort of non-diverse attorneys certainly encounter obstacles as they move forward throughout their career. They have to work hard. They've got to overcome this, that, or the other. It's my opinion that there's a really good chance that the pathway for you all, the pathway for diverse attorneys, will be harder than for non-diverse attorneys. Period. End of discussion. From where I sit. I'm just the guy chatting with you for a few minutes. I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm not here to be a doom and gloom guy either. But I am here to sort of deliver some practical advice that you may want to consider. I think you should be prepared for a scenario whereby you have peers, colleagues, managers, supervisors, whomever, customers, clients even, who are not terribly interested in your story, are not terribly interested in your background, are not terribly interested in what it is that you bring to the table, period. From an intelligence perspective, from a legal skill perspective, from whatever it is that you do well. I don't think that I think that there will be situations whereby people are not engaged in thinking broadly about diversity and inclusion. And it's a tragedy, quite honestly, because a great many firms, businesses, and the like spend a lot of time recruiting people, and they at least have the operating assumption, I will say the operating proposition that they are in fact hiring the best and the brightest, but that's not always the case. But I think that it is the indifference as to what your true capabilities are and what the true capabilities of everyone hired at companies, law firms, and the like is what can be quite demoralizing over time. Mike mentioned that I've worked for 22 years in big law, had a great career, but ultimately decided I wanted to do something else, which was go in-house. But I can tell you, in the early years of my career, I certainly suffered from the concept of lower expectations. I felt like I was the smartest guy in the room. And maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Probably was not. But I was definitely the hardest working person in the room in terms of my summer associate class new first year class and so on and so forth. But the bottom line was I found myself not getting the best assignments, not being paired with the best mid-level and senior associates, not being paired with the best partners. Now, I survived, but it was a tough time. Made tougher, and this was, it was the 80s and early 90s, but we're talking about AmLaw 50 law firms, giant law firms. So, and I'd look around, and I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I didn't see anyone in the senior partner ranks who looked like me. One thing that I just thought about in terms of this particular address, and I hadn't thought about in 5 years, quite honestly, was I used to run large deals, mergers and acquisitions, IPOs, so on and so forth, where on any given occasion, there might be 30 people in a room, lawyers, business people, execs, accountants, investment bankers, so on and so forth. Some of those meetings I ran. Probably 80 deals, now that I think about it. Never did I ever encounter another either African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, or woman on the other side of the table as my opponent leading their team. Never. So there's room for improvement, and I think that the notion that you sort of read about the whole self-visualization, that's real. That is absolutely real, and it is sustaining to some degree. I wish that I could almost sort of teleport back and sort of truly assess I won't say damage, that was done to me as a result of not having that ability to see it being done. Like our first speaker, I'm the first lawyer in my family, so did not have that sort of ability to sort of fall back on knowledge, people who had been in the game in order to help me get through things. So I say all of this to say, as you go forward, know what potential speed bumps there may be and be in a position to sort of maneuver around them or just sprint over them, whatever it may be. So if, in fact, such a harsh reality hits you in the face and you've got to deal with it, how do you deal with it? What do you do? It might sound a little bit trite, but quite honestly, I think the first thing you do is to keep doing what got you here, right? For everyone in here, whether you're a diversity scholar or a returning diversity scholar or a student from another school who got themselves here, really dedicated, you have already accomplished a great deal. You've already overcome obstacles. I don't care if they were, high school obstacles, academic obstacles, financial obstacles, maybe English is your third language obstacles, okay? You have accomplished a great deal already. And you are in position to accomplish so much more. So I think that is a type of resiliency that all of you have, and you should flex it when you need to. It's a muscle. Think of it as a muscle. And that combined with your support network, family, community, friends, so on and so forth, is going to be sustaining for you on a going forward basis. I believe that very, very seriously, very fervently. I think in addition to that, I'm going to offer you what I think of as my 4 success themes, although I could have given you 2 or 8, quite honestly. And I think that everybody has their own way of sort of looking back on the arc of their own career and thinking about what's worked and what has not worked and maybe what worked best. So for me, they're really 4: excellence, risk-taking, mentorship and sponsorship, And then number 4, which is probably most important for me, is relationships. And we'll tick through these relatively quickly. Excellence is what it is. It's obvious. But I think to get where you need to get, where you want to be from a career perspective, again, firm, in-house, you want to be a novelist, you know, whatever it is, you want to write screenplays. During this upcoming phase of your career as an early lawyer to develop, you've got to, A, be the best, or aim to be the best lawyer that you can be. Doesn't mean that you're the smartest in the room. Does mean that you are one of the hardest working in the room, and that is of critical importance. What a lot of people figure or get wrong is the fact that it's not always about the work that you do from, 8 to 6 or 8 to 8, or, Madison when she's working on deals with us, 8 to 2 in the morning, No, it's you've got to also invest in yourself. So, it's continuing legal education, it's PLIs, it's courses, it's accounting for lawyers, it's financial statements for lawyers, it's all these things that not everybody does. Quite honestly, I think very few people do these things. So once you, graduate, get the bar behind you, get started in your careers, don't lose sight of the fact that there's always new stuff to learn. I work at a cybersecurity software company, all right? I don't code. Mike and I laugh about it all the time. I don't code. It took me more than a minute, let's just say, to figure out exactly what it is we're selling to these companies and to these governmental agencies and all that. But, they hired me to help them get to Wall Street, and we did that. But that wasn't enough for me. Had to continue to ask the questions, which I felt were so stupid. And quite honestly, the engineers, anybody in here an engineer? Because, okay, I'm going to talk to you later. You guys have such an ability to make non-engineers sort of say, what did he just say, Can't have a conversation. So in any event, I think that you get the point. Be as good as you can be, and that's going to help you. From a risk-taking perspective, you don't have to pack up and move and live in Shanghai like I did. You don't have to go quite that far. But opportunities will present themselves for you to change practice groups within a law firm, leave a law firm world, which can be cushy, relative to other jobs in society, and go work for government. Go work in the federal government, for example. If you want to be the baddest environmental lawyer there is, maybe leave and work for the EPA for 2-3 years, okay? And then go back into private practice or something else along those lines. I think also mentorship, sponsorship, whether it's in life or within your organization is critical. And not enough people realize that it's often about far more than your ability to get the project done on time. It's about knowing who can be helpful to you within your organization. When it's time for promotions, when it's time for elevation to partner, whatever it is, you need to know who will be in the room. You need to know who is going to potentially be a sponsor for you, right? And make sure they're very happy with your work product. Make sure that they're happy with you and your commitment to the organization, so on and so forth. And also recognize that as you are headed this way down this practice trajectory, there are often going to be people who can be very helpful to you that aren't here, but they're on either side. They may be adjacent to your path. Pluck them, pluck their knowledge, reach out to them. Mike and I both probably have 40 or 50 people that we mentor. And sometimes it's a 5-minute conversation once every 3 months. And sometimes when somebody's in the middle of something, it's, 2 Saturdays in a row. I'm a brunch with walking someone through a career transition and just giving my input. So it all depends. But you'll have to remember to pay it forward, however, all right? Because if you're going to benefit from that type of arrangement, you should be prepared to do the same for people younger than you who also will be in need at some point in time. Lastly, relationships. To me, relationships are absolutely everything, particularly in the legal business, which has whether you're in a firm or in a corporate setting, has somewhat of a referral aspect to it, right? Some of the relationships I've developed with people in my firms or investment bankers that I represented or just interacted with in terms of helping their clients continue to be very important relationships to me even now. So, Mike and I talked. Mike mentioned that we were frenemies. We were frenemies and knew a lot of the same people, and so we were both smart frenemies and didn't burn bridges. We opposed one another. There's no doubt about that. We competed, and that's what it's all about. But you do it with a view toward a long-term, what's best in the long term for you and those around you, quite honestly. So, as I mentioned before, these 4 survival strategies, success themes, however you want to term it, are by no means a silver bullet. There are lots of ways to get to the finish line, so to speak. And in addition to whatever your strategy is, your way of managing your own career and charting your own course, quite honestly, luck, timing, being in the right place at the right time, oh yeah, it's real. Don't discount that at all. And don't ever let anybody up here in front of you say, oh, it was all about me and my strategy took me from this point to this point. Bull. Right? Some of it is just right place, right time. I think that your generation, I have a couple of daughters who are in college, and when I look at them and the way they network and the way they research and, they won't go to dinner. I'm like, oh, we're going to go to this place for dinner. Well, let me look it up on Yelp beforehand. Let me do this. Okay, Dad, I know you've been everywhere in terms of restaurants and you're paying, but no, let's veto this because some guy 4 days ago didn't like what he got. And as I was telling Nikki earlier, I'm like, okay, we'll go someplace else. They tell me what to do. So I have a ton of confidence in everybody in this room doing what is going to be best in your interest, in your best interest as you plot your career on a go-forward basis. So in closing, I would absolutely like to, again, congratulate each and every one of you for being here. And your accomplishments today, those that you're going to accomplish in the future that you don't even know about yet, but there's a lot of them coming, absolutely a lot of them coming. Please remember to flex that resiliency muscle when you need to, right? Flex that muscle when you need to. And also, never hesitate to demonstrate to whomever you need to demonstrate it to that you deserve to be on the team and you deserve to be playing in the game. Thank you very much.